the next bowl game that I want to talk about, because I think it's oddly enough the most interesting one, the Capital One Orange Bowl. What Tennessee played in last year. It's December 30th, 4:00 Eastern on the ESPN network. It's Georgia versus Florida State. It's the 5-6 team that got left out, and both of us kind of had our arguments with those teams. Like, we understand on Florida State's reason, like, because the playoff committee is trying to just mitigate the damages. Because no matter how they would have went, they would have been the first time something had happened, regardless on their decision.
Yeah.
But you also got Georgia, who went from being the number 1 ranked team in America, voted on by that same committee, and they drop them to number 6 because they lost by 3 points in their SEC championship game. A game that's not supposed to mean as much as the regular season games, right? They're not supposed to punish a team as harshly in the championship games as they do in the regular season, but yet they still drop 5 spots. Interesting game here. I want to know your thoughts on it.
So we talked a little bit about this game last week because we were able to find out that these two teams were playing before we got off the air. And I backtracked on it, but I made the mistake of saying that I think that the committee got this game wrong about who Florida State should play. And I said that I think that they should have played Liberty. And I didn't mean that in a bad way towards Florida State. I felt like that Georgia playing Oregon would have been a more interesting matchup to me than Florida State playing against Georgia, because personally, the way that Florida State is right now, I think that Georgia is going to absolutely steamroll Florida State in this game. But on the flip side, how much satisfaction would you have as a Florida State fan if you go out there and you beat the team that, in my opinion, is still the number 1 team in the nation, is still the best team in the nation? I won't say number 1 team, but still the best overall team in the nation. How would you how satisfying would it feel as a Florida State fan to go out there and beat that team and say, and look at the committee leaving us out of the playoffs?
100%.
On one hand, you would be very satisfied for that, but on the other hand, you would be just absolutely furious because they just said that you couldn't go.
Why are you asking me and then you're answering your own question? See, you know what? No, you're asking me, son. All right, look, but you're absolutely right. You're never going to turn down a win, right? So on one hand, they're going to be very ecstatic that they beat Georgia. But then on the other hand, it wouldn't freaking matter. Like, it would honestly, like you said, it would infuriate me that we were not in the playoff. And thus, literally, you sit there with a New Year's 6 win over Georgia, and now what? Like, you literally, I mean, I don't even want to talk about it. Really doesn't matter. And I think that's why, ultimately, I kind of want to ask you this. Do you think the game gets played, period?
That's a good question. I think that it should. And my dad and I talked about this on the way up to the game last night. He said, Florida State before the season started was talking about wanting to leave the ACC conference. If they don't play in this bowl game, because, so there's been conversation talking about, if Georgia or Alabama wins the college football playoff, how does that help Tennessee any? Well, on one hand, it doesn't help Tennessee any, but on the other hand, when you play in these big bowl games like this, you get revenue for the conference that goes towards each school. So,
split even.
Yes. So if Florida State was to not play in this bowl game, they don't get that money from the conference or for the conference to split among the other ACC teams. What other conference is going to want Florida State? Because they're going to sit there and say, well, look at what you did in this bowl game. You sat out and cost your conference millions of dollars. We don't want you because you might do the same thing to us.
Well, yes and no, but I have heard through the grapevine and through some cool little videos that I watch, Florida State's actually raised enough money through their whatever, basically for their buyout of the conference. Almost like if they wanted to pull the trigger any moment, they can. So it's interesting that you bring that up because I wonder if if Florida State's decision really, it doesn't really matter what the ACC thinks, because at the end of the day, especially with all the movement we have going on, they'll just leave. Here, take your 170 million that you need. We'll bounce and go somewhere else that, well, actually, because right now I think ACC is one of the, at least now they are because of the Pac-2, one of the least paying as far as like per college or per team, in the nation out of the Power Fives, Power Fours, however you want to call it. You got the SEC, Big Ten are very much with their new TV deals. They're giving each school dang near 50 to 100 million every season, just splitting it. Bam, there you go. And you got the ACC that's only doing like 15 to 20 million, and the Big 12 is doing way better than that now. Which I don't know how with them losing Texas and Oklahoma, but whatever. So yeah, I mean, I think this decision, it's an interesting one because, they had a press conference with Kirby and Mike Norvell, and that press conference got canceled for the bowl game. So I'm very interested to see what the future holds for this Orange Bowl, because maybe a chance that there's not one.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I still strongly believe that they should play in the game, but
as a football fan, yes.